Today we're going to be unboxing the Steam Deck. I put it in a reservation the day that it was announced, and mine has finally arrived. I've actually been playing with it for about a week, but first things first, let's get it out of the box. I was a little nervous because a lot of times they send electronics in very obvious boxes, but the box was plain on the outside except for the battery warning, which is required, so that was actually kind of nice, and we didn't have to worry about it getting stolen, unless somebody knew what it was. Inside this tiny little white box is the charger and manual. The charger itself isn't very exciting, but it does seem to be pretty necessary since the Steam Deck doesn't seem to charge very well on other types of charge cables like USB, so just be aware that plugging it directly into the wall is pretty important. The manual is just warranty information for the most part, so don't really worry too much about that. Up next is the console itself. I think each of the consoles comes with a case, and they're all pretty well wrapped up so that they can't get damaged in transit, due to like water or anything like that. But I did have quite a bit of an issue getting into this. I don't know what was up with this box, but it was just a complete fail, and I ended up having to Hulk it out of the box itself to get to it. It was amusing to me. The case itself is pretty heavy and pretty heavy duty. It comes with this cute little elastic strap on the back, not quite sure how to use that, maybe put it on a belt or something, and a nice little handle so you can carry it. There's a label on the side. I'm not sure if this is new for the Steam Deck, but I assume it is, and the case is actually locked. I assume that way that if it's stolen or something, or like somebody tries to open it, they can't get into it and like put it back in the box to like deliver it, so that's kind of nice. And then once you open it up, there's the console itself. Nice little pull tab so it can come right out because it sits in there pretty snugly, and it's pretty heavy actually, and a lot bigger than I had expected it to be. It smells like electronics. The Steam Deck is as you would expect when it comes to controllers. It's got your basic things such as the D-pad and analog sticks, select and start and action buttons. The two big things here that this also has, on the front anyway, is the touch pads on the left and the right, which are fine, as well as the additional Steam button, and there's actually an additional options button on the right-hand side as well. All of the controls feel really good to me. All the buttons seem to be very responsive and bounce back. The touchpads don't really do anything other than, be touched. So that's to be expected, but everything else seems really, really good. On the top side, we do have the left and right bumpers. Both of these feel really good, really responsive, and they have a nice little bounce to them. The sound buttons are kind of in the center and kind of hard to reach for short fingers, and it's the same thing with the power button. You may not be able to use it unless you are reaching across the top of the controller. Not that I guess it really matters, but it might be of concern if you're trying to turn sound down or up. That's it for the front and top side of the Steam Deck. It's on the back that you also have the L4 and L5 buttons. I don't have anything that uses these, and I'm not entirely sure how well they're going to work out because they seem to be a little bit far away for people with small hands, but that just might be what I've seen on my use for them. And also on the bottom you do have the extended micro SD slot. I don't have anything in there currently, but I'm planning on getting something in the future. Well, what about the software? Well, let's talk a little bit about the booting up sequence and everything else that does come along with this console. First of all, I wanted to show off the loading time of just getting from dead off to on, which does seem to take a little bit of time. I am kind of used to consoles taking some time, but it is kind of obnoxious to see that the Steam Deck is in that as well. Once your console is all loaded up, it'll check the network, which will then log you in to the system. It might take a little bit depending on your network, of course, but I have shoddy network, so I expect that. The console comes with exactly what you'd expect. You start out on a home screen, which has all your games, and the Steam button then takes you to places like your library, which is split into different little groups, such as which ones are good on deck and which games you have and are currently installed. You can also check things like the store if you're logged in to your network, which automatically takes you to the page of games that are optimized for the Steam Deck. You have other things such as friends, media, downloads, settings, and power. Of course, the big thing here is if you go to power, you can switch to the desktop version. This can be really important. It was actually really important for me to learn because there is a glitch on the system in which you try to log into the network, and for some reason it will not connect unless you are in the desktop version. So just keep that in mind if you haven't gotten yours yet. So how do the games play on the Steam Deck? I started with Slay the Spire because this game was built to be used with a controller, so I figured it'd be a good way to try out some of the buttons without having to play too much with the touchpads. You can kind of see how long it took there to log in to the game. That one's actually not too bad. You can see here, the game looks really good on the Steam Deck. It runs really well. It looks really good. The sound is actually really good. It's far better in person than it is via my camera microphone, which is okay. Everything feels really good when you're attempting to use it. The buttons are very responsive. I haven't had any issues with the controllers itself acting up. I have had some issues with the games not being properly optimized, where it suddenly it'll stop registering whether or not I want to play cards and I have to exit out in order to get it to work again. This seems to be just a game thing though and not the deck itself. So what are you gonna do other than just, deal with it? The other game I picked to play today is RimWorld because I have a lot of experience with RimWorld and also because of how it runs on console. Now the first thing to note here is the loading time. This is when things start to get interesting. I do not have any mods installed except for the 2 DLCs on this game, and yet it does seem to take an exorbitant amount of time to load up. I'm not sure why that is the case, but it is a thing. Now this type of game uses either you can use the touch screen, it uses the touch pads, or you can also use the analog sticks. There's a lot of different options, but all of them are valid. And you can see here that the mouse appears when I use the touchpad and I can move it around. It's hard to show on screen here because it's very soft, but when you move the mouse around using the touchpad, there's actually some feedback on the console itself where it kind of bumps a little bit every so often. So I'll move it a little bit, make an inch or so on screen, and each of the sides where it's like that will kind of send back a little bit of touch feedback, which is actually really nice. And then you can see that I can actually use the touchpad itself in order to interact with the game, because the screen is touchable and you can use it for a variety of different things. Actually, not all games have that activated, but this one does, which is good for selecting all sorts of things. This isn't necessarily just the Steam Deck, but I have had some issues with consoles and playing games like this. It's a little bit of a learning curve to figure out where you need to touch to get things to happen. Some things are very small in the game, so it can be very frustrating if you're not used to it. So do I enjoy the Steam Deck? The answer to that question is yes. It is a little bit bigger than, say, the Switch, which I do have one of. I picked it up so I could have some of these newer games on a portable console, and I love the size. It's not that much bigger. I do like the fact that there's those little hand holder thingies, and it's not that much bigger than the Switch, so I actually really appreciate that, and I absolutely positively have been enjoying it. I enjoy that I can now play games that I have purchased once on a portable console, so I'm not having to buy them a second time for the Switch, which may actually wear down my use on the Switch a little bit, but it is what it is. And I would definitely suggest it if you have the money and want to play your Steam games on the go. That's what I bought it for, and that's what I'm going to use it for.